Alrighty, this is our treatment demo. We're doing minimal pairs approach, semantic confrontation. My name is Alexandra Harding.
I'm Maddie.
I'm
Kelly.
Marine. I'm Sydney.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Caitlin.
Okay, next slide. For the intro, we are doing our minimal pairs approach. It's a contrastive therapy method used to address phonological errors by presenting word pairs that differ by a single phoneme. In semantic confrontation, the child is taught to recognize how their production results in a communication breakdown for prompting correction through meaningful feedback. This increases phonemic awareness and helps the child suppress error patterns by emphasizing the functional impact of accurate sound production.
In the book, Bellman Wrangler basically gives an overview of the minimal opposition contrast therapy and the minimal pair approach. As you may know, it's when a phone that the child can produce is typically paired with one that is not produced correctly, and they differ by one phoneme and break meaning, or more than one phoneme for a near minimal pair. She also mentions that it's suitable for children with moderate to severe or severe phonological disorders. Usually it would work best with children from ages 3 to 7 years old. And basically the process to get to spontaneous speech, once you choose the minimal pairs, you follow the steps of the discussion of words and then discrimination testing and training, and then product training, and then later on carryover training. I thought this chart would be useful, but it's basically what minimal pairs would work best with phonological processes, since we went over that a lot this course. Yeah. In terms of the technique we chose, semantic confrontation or confusion, it's basically when a child produces errors with the minimal pairs. And an example of this would be if a child were to say can when pointing at a picture of a pan, the SLP would be saying, do you mean can while pointing at a picture of a can, or pan while pointing a picture of a pan? This is basically used to allow the client to hear the incorrect sound and give an opportunity to provide feedback so that the child can produce the sound correctly in order to distinguish meaning. And also, we would use this technique during a session where the child does not perceive the error or has difficulties with phonemic awareness. And as I've said before, the target population would be children with speech sound disorders.
You're muted.
Thank you. The client background, so Jackson JC is the 3-year, 10-month-old preschool student who presents with a moderate to severe phonological disorder. He is currently stimulable to produce some velar and fricative sounds, though not consistently across context. We'll target a range of phonological processes, including weak syllable deletion, final consonant deletion, cluster reduction, stopping of fricatives, velar fronting, affrication, deaffrication, glottal H replacement, and prevocalic voicing. Jackson presents with a high prevalence of phonological patterns that significantly impacts his intelligibility.
So what we are targeting, since Jackson is stimulable for K and G, Allie and I will focus on targeting the phonological process of velar fronting using the semantic confrontation technique. And then below, we're just giving a little more background information, sort of summarizing the client background slide. So I played the clinician and Allie played the client. And then the goal for Jackson will be to accurately produce initial K in minimal pair words with 70% accuracy during structured tasks, thereby reducing the phonological process of fronting. And then this is just the cards that we had made. Since he had a lot of different phonological processes, we tried to narrow down words that were simple and that he could say. But in the video, you'll see sometimes instead of producing the T, he'll do a D instead because of his pre-vocalic voicing. But we wanted to just target one sound to keep it as simple as we could. But for it to be realistic, we tried to show what he may actually say. So we can go to the next slide. And then this will be the video. Is the volume up?
I think you're muted, Boo.
Let me restart because it's muted. Sorry.
No worries.
Hi, JC. How are you today? Good. Good. Okay. So for today, we're going to be working on your velar fronting by targeting our K sound by using some minimal pair cards. I kind of have them pulled up right now. So I'm going to show you some pictures and I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. And today we're going to shoot for 70% correct responses. So just try your best. Okay. Are you ready? Okay, I just want to make sure you can see my pictures here. All right. So here is a key, and this opens a door. Can you say key?
T.
That sounded like tea, something we drink, but I meant key, the one for unlocking. Can you try again? And remember, it's your back sound, like key.
Key.
That's better. Now say tea, like warm tea in a cup.
D.
Nice try. That's tea right here. Now, can I hear both? Key for door and T for cup.
D. K.
Good trying. All right, let's move on to the next. Let's find the cop, someone who helps people. Can you say cop?
Top.
That was top, like a spinning toy right here. But I meant cop with our back sound, cop. Can you try that together?
Cop.
Good job. Yes, that's the cup. Now say top, like the toy you spit.
Top.
Good work. You're showing me you know the difference. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next. Look at this cap, something that you put on your water bottle. Can you say cap?
Dap.
I heard cap, like turning on a faucet, but a cap goes on our water bottle. So let's try with our back sound. Cap.
Cap.
Nice job. Now can you say tap, like when you tap a table?
Dap.
That's it. You're really listening to the sounds. So let's do our very last one. We have kite and tight. So this one's a kite that you fly outside. Can you say kite?
Tight.
That sounded like tight shoes or a tight jar. But I meant kite for the sky. So let's try again with our back sound. Kite.
Kite.
Yes, that is a kite. Now say tight, like when your clothes are too tight or it's hard to put something on.
Tight.
Good try. All right, that's all we have for today. You did a great job. Let me just get back to my main screen.
Okay. So today I'm going to walk you through a study that I found that looked at how students responded to using the minimal pairs technique to improve their pronunciation. The purpose of the study was to investigate the extent to which the minimal pairs technique could assist in enhancing students' English production. To do this, the researchers used a qualitative method where they gave students structured questionnaires like a Likert scale, with a choice of answers that included strongly agree, agree, undecided, disagree, and strongly disagree. Some students were also asked to participate in filling out a Google form and direct interviews with a list of written questions as a guide that focused on students' perceptions of using minimal pairs. They were asked about their knowledge and experience with using minimal pairs, advantages and disadvantages, and if minimal pairs can help improve listening skills and differentiating phoneme sounds. They were also asked to participate in pair drills in a classroom where one student would read out two words like it or eat, and life and live, and then another student would listen closely to identify the difference. This practice helped improve both speaking and listening skills. The findings showed that students had positive perceptions of this method. Students understood the application of using minimal pairs to recognize the phonemes that distinguish meaning. They found the method to be rewarding and enjoyable, which motivated them and created a positive setting in the classroom. This technique made the classroom atmosphere active. Students became more active when students become more active when learning begins, and they pay more attention. This technique also improved both pronunciation and listening skills, as well as phoneme discrimination. Pairing up and contrasting similar words was a very effective way for the students to listen and identify different sounds. A disadvantage that was found, oh yeah, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, there we go. A disadvantage that was found was that it requires a kind of a long time to learn, especially for non-native speakers. Now, where this connects to semantic confrontation is the way that both techniques rely. Wait, go back. There you go. It's the way that both techniques rely on contrast. Minimal pairs give the auditory basis, while semantic confrontation adds cognitive challenge of discerning meaning. Minimal pairs help students hear and produce slightly different sounds in words like pull versus pull. Semantic confrontation, on the other hand, helps students understand that those sounds carry different meanings. In other words, they're complementary. Learners listen to and articulate similar words while understanding their meaning, which benefits pronunciation and correct vocabulary usage. When you combine students, when you combine both, students aren't just repeating words, they're actively thinking about how sound affects meaning. That's especially helpful for non-native learners who may not naturally recognize these contrasts without explicit practice. So, together, these two methods reinforce one another. One builds phonological awareness, and the other builds semantic precision.
And then for my journal article I found is called Outcomes of Minimal Pair Intervention in a school-age child with a consistent phonological disorder. The aim of the study was to test the effectiveness of minimal pair intervention on a school-age child. The participant was a boy aged 8 years and 11 months who presented with a consistent phonological disorder. The multiple baseline case study was used to measure the effects of minimal pair therapy over 6 sessions. After the initial assessment, the child showed multiple phonological processes. These included fronting, depalatalization, backing, deaffrication, cluster reduction, and gliding and stopping. But for this particular journal article, they've just focused on his sounds going from his S instead of the sh sound. And then the findings of this article used a direct case study and multiple data statistics to prove the reliability and validity of the minimal pair approach in regards to treating a phonological process disorder. And through this approach, not only was the s for sh improved, but also the ch and j became generalized in this particular client. And then this little table I found was attached to the article, and it kind of showed his progress through the 6 sessions and it all going up and improving, which also shows how the minimal pair process kind of works and improves this phonological disorder.
Okay, so I compared the multiple oppositions intervention to our minimal pair approach. So first off, some differences. So the minimal pairs approach focuses on one sound at a time and looking at words that only contrast with just one sound. As for multiple oppositions approach, the child uses one sound for multiple different sounds, which is like a phoneme collapse. So some examples of this used for minimal pair approach is if the child says T for both key and T, then the therapist might work using minimal pairs like T and key. But the multiple oppositions approach is if the child uses D for g, k, or ch. So he's using one for many, or he's using one sound for many different. And then for similarities, so they both aim to target a child's sound production by pointing out the differences between sounds. The focus is on contrasting sounds to promote phonological learning, and they both use word pairs that are different by only one or two phonemes to demonstrate the distinguishing functions of a sound.
And then our conclusion to conclude this presentation, we talked a little bit about the minimal pair approach and that it's an effective method for treating children with phonological disorders. It uses word pairs that differ by just one phoneme to help a child recognize and produce correct sound contrasts. And then we also focused on the semantic confrontation approach, which directly challenges the child's error by showing how a mispronunciation can change the meaning of a word. This technique offers valuable insight into a child's stimulability for a target sound. And then the research and the journal articles we found also helped us to explain why this approach is valid and can be a practical tool that can be successfully incorporated into therapy sessions with children with phonological challenges. And then these are just our references here. And thank you, that's it.